All right, everybody, welcome back. Sunday night, I don't know, about 6:30, 7 o'clock. We're trying to get several bikes ready for Arcadia Bike Fest coming up here November 5th. I was being lazy today and sitting home on the couch, realized that's really not too far away, so figured I better get up and come over here and get some wiring work done on the 750 Lowrider bike. Nobody else is here, it's quiet, so it's a good time for me to do wiring. I can focus on what I'm doing and try and get some of this wiring banged out. Now that we got all the airbrush work done, we'll be getting ready to get the paint finalized and try and get this bike wrapped up here in the next few weeks. I have to be working a couple nights and late on some weekends to try and get it done for this event. So anyway, we're going to get started wiring. I'll try and give as much information as I'm going along. Some tips and tricks on different wiring things I do to make life easy when you're scratch wiring a bike. So, all right, this is our dash, mounts up on our tank. Used to have a bunch of indicator lights and stuff. We went ahead and installed this GPS speedometer, and this is going to be our air ride up and down switches, our driving light switch, and our radio on off. And then also we'll wire up the speedometer. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and sub-wire all this into a small harness with a plug so that we can remove it from the bike when we need to remove the tank for any kind of servicing work. This Speedo has also a backlight illumination, which I'm just going to go ahead and tie into the switch power. Normally on a car or something like that, you would tie it into the headlight switch, but since the lights on a motorcycle basically are just always on, I just hook those together. The bike comes on, we got the backlight. Okay, so our air ride switches, I like to run the air ride with a constant hot power so that you can air it up and down even when the bike is off. Just in case you need to move it or whatever. Sometimes it's helpful to be able to do that. So on this particular bike, if you remember when we were doing our wiring before, in a previous video, we labeled all of our wires. So yellow is battery power. So we're going to try and keep all these wire colors similar. This blue I'm going to use for the driving lights. And the radio power. extend these wires to the speedometer, and also we need switched power going to the running light switch and the radio switch. So what I'm going to do here is, we don't want to have to run individual switched power wires because there'd be a whole bunch of them running up here. So off of this, we're just going to make 2 switched jumpers to go just up here at the dash, and that will give our switch power to our speedometer and both of our switches. Then we'll only have the outputs for those coming out, which just makes for cleaner wiring. You want to have the least amount of wires necessary to achieve the job. Anything more just makes clutter and mess and causes problems. So these little aluminum switches look really nice, but they're a little bit of a pain to get the wiring, and everything's so tiny on them. But once you get them hooked up, you really won't have to unhook them. So it's kind of, I think it's worth the trouble, because they do look nice. Again, whenever we're making a wiring connection that isn't a screw terminal, we always solder and heat shrink everything. If you didn't catch our earlier episode, I use this marine grade heat shrink. All this wire I use is marine grade. Try to use all marine grade wiring stuff on the bikes. Just holds up better to the elements, and we know bikes sometimes get into the elements even if they're not really intended to. So extend our ground wire. These are going to be our running light lead going into the bike and the radio lead. These will both be getting run to relays. That's something a lot of people, I think, neglect. I don't know why, but there seems to be a lot of confusion about how a relay works and how to wire one. So when we get up to that, I'll show how I do it, and it's really pretty simple once you understand the theory behind it. And when you use these little switches like this, if you don't run a relay, chances are the switch burns out and you start having electrical trouble with whatever you hook to the switch. The theory behind that is switches are all rated at a certain amperage. If you use something that draws more amperage than the switch is rated for, it burns out. When you use these little tiny switches, they're usually rated for sometimes 5 or 7 amps. And anything you use lighting wise, unless it's LEDs, now with LEDs it's not as much of a problem, but definitely radio stuff, or like those old driving lights I put on here, or as your main bike switch, any of that kind of stuff draws more than 5 amps, so you end up melting the switch and then you lose all your power. What a relay is it's most of them are 30 or 40 amp. It's basically just an electronic switch that draws very low amperage when you switch it. So it's basically an electric switch that you switch with a manual switch, if that makes any sense. Keep them as neat and clean under here as possible. Then we're going to go ahead and get out the label maker and label them all before we put them in the wiring loom. So once they're in the loom, it's hard to trace them back sometimes, and since we're probably not going to complete the wiring job today, when we come back in a few days or whatever, it'll help us remember where we were. And actually, while I'm doing this, I'm thinking I have these 2 yellows. I don't know why I wasn't thinking, but we're going to take this and turn it into one. Again, one less wire to go into the bike and into the plug, which you're limited. I don't know how many terminals I have in the plugs I have. I got to dig them up and see. Might end up having to put 2 plugs if we don't have enough. If I don't have a big enough terminal, big enough plug for the amount of wires I have. So we'll figure that out in a minute here after I get all these labeled and we'll get the loom on. Again, if you missed our previous episodes on this build, this label machine prints on heat shrink, and so you can just label what the wires are. It shrinks on and let you know what the wire's for when you come back to doing your work. So once we get that on, put a little heat shrink on the end of it just to keep it nice and clean and from fraying. Alright, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wires. Now the question is, do we have a 7-pin weather pack connector? So I am going to go hunt those down and I will be right back. Alright, we got our weather pack kit here. It's from DIYAutotune.com. We're not affiliated with them in any way. They just make a nice bulk pack builder's kit of these weather pack connectors. So if you've never used these, they're great. They're insulated at the point where they connect. There's also wire insulation. I'll show you as we start putting these together. For each individual wire, they're weatherproof. They're great. So I do not have a 7-pin connector, so we're going to just use 2 4s. And no big deal there. Also, what we're going to do is, because it's going to be 2 of the same connector, we're going to use a female connector on one side and a male connector on the other side, thus allowing us to never accidentally plug the connectors in the wrong way. So we have our crimp terminals, male and female, and our connectors, and our wire insulators. So I'll kind of walk you through doing one of these, and then we'll get them all done here. So we're going to just start here. This is how, I do one wire at a time, both sides of the plug, so there's no confusion. So we just give ourselves a little bit. We're going to snip it off there. Slide this insulator, it's a little rubber insulator. I slide it down over the wire. get it out of your way. Take your wire stripper, strip off, I guess about a 3/16 to a 1/4 of an inch. You take your crimp connector, which is here. I use these Excel ratcheting crimpers. They have 3 different size jaws for your different gauge wire depending on what you're using. So this is just a nice setup. I'll put links to all these tools. I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. This is just the stuff I use. I've been using for years and I like it. So I load that in the crimper. I slide the wire in the back and I crimp it. I take my plastic plug housing. I slide the wire in till it clips on the detents, and then I push the rubber insulator in. It's that simple. Then I take the wire piece I just cut off that has our label on it, and I do the same thing for the other side. That way there's no confusion, no accidental miswires. And this is how I do it, just one wire at a time, so that, you know, everything works the first time and we don't have to go back chasing wires, which is no fun when we have to do that. So once you get all 4 wires in there, you flip this over, locks those seals in, and you got a plug that's just about fully weatherproof. So we'll put this last one in this side, and then we'll do the next 3 wires, and we'll be ready to move on to the next phase. There you have it. They're pretty tight to squeeze together, but it locks, and it's nice connection. Waterproof, weatherproof, everything you could want on a motorcycle. So we are going to do the male side plug on these last 3 wires so that we can't accidentally mix up the plugs ever. Alright, that's the last wire for this. So there we go. We got our dash all wired. I'm going to go ahead and put a little small piece of loom on here just to keep these kind of neat when they go into the bike. If I can find my... These wires are going to go in all different directions once we get into the frame, so I'm just putting a little short piece of loom on them to keep them kind of neat. And then they'll all get individually loomed just depending upon where they run. Alright, we're going to throw this gas tank up here real quick, just so we can figure out how we're going to route the wires. Dash will mount up right here. Wires will run through here. I'll be able to go ahead and get this stuff tied up. unplug the dash. We can set it off to the side because we don't need it right now to finish our wiring because we have our sub harness in place. Pop this back off and continue with getting our bike wired up. Again, going with our trend of trying to simplify wiring as much as we can. Like here we have our 2 yellows. These are going to be battery power. So we're going to go ahead and join these into one. Couple of blacks of ground, so we're gonna go ahead and join those up. I like to usually run all my grounds back to either the actual battery or where the ground cable mounts to the motor. You can ground them to the frame. It works 99% of the time, but every now and then it'll give you trouble, and so I just run them all back. Either sometimes I'll do a ground junction, or like I said, run it to the wherever the ground strap bolts onto the bike, or just the actual battery. Just helps avoid potential issues, which just makes life easier sometimes. So we got those two. A lot of times I'll just kind of flip the wires over to the other side as you're going, so you know which ones you've gotten to and which ones you haven't. Okay, so we have 2 reds here. Both of these are switched power. So again, we're just going right back to the same process basically over and over. You know, taking 2 wires and getting them cut down to 1 just to slim the harness and eliminate as much wire as we can from the bike. bikes have enough extra wiring on them to begin with, so you know, just minimizing anything we can helps make a cleaner bike, which is what the custom bike stuff is all about to me. Alright, so we've got everything back into the battery box area. This bike stock has this big plastic storage container which originally had a tool kit in it. We are going to ditch that. I just need a screwdriver. And we're not going to carry a tool kit. So we'll have this box here to mount our #1 air switching valve and also our battery or relays rather. So we'll have our relays mounted in here and our air switching valve will slide in here. Just help keep, again, everything clean and neat as possible. Okay, so I got these little micro relays. Not sure how many we're going to need yet. I have to figure that out. But you have basically the relay holder. This is 4 of them clipped together, and then you have your relay. And what you have is 4 wires on each relay holder. So you your power input, your power output, a ground wire, and your signal wire. Your signal wire is your low amperage switch, which triggers the power input and the output to connect together, and the ground is just because you need to ground it for it to work. Let's look at what we got here as far as what we're going to need for our relay count, and then we can figure out how we're going to get them mounted. We have our radio, which will need one, our main power switch, which will need one, our driving lights. So that's 1, 2, 3. Radio, driving lights, and our main power. This is our neutral light and our starter button. Those are going to need to run down to, well, the starter's going to go here. The neutral light is our brown wire. So that is going to need to get its own little loom and run down to the neutral switch on the engine. So we'll just kind of loop this through here for now so we just get a general idea where it's going. And then obviously we'll run it neater and cleaner when we're doing the final install. This is our air up and down, which will need to go into this box. This is our fog light input. This is our starter relay wire. Starter relay happens to just be mounted right here. So that'll go to there. Just get that looped together. And this is our switched power output, which is going to power all of our everything. You know, our ignition box, our starter solenoid, all this stuff. And our ground, which will go to the battery. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these wires are going to go into this box. So, and we need 3 relays. So we're going to ditch one of these because we only need 3. Obviously we know all of our grounds we can hook together. Again, back to our same old thing of wanting to simplify what we're doing. Cut these off. Put them all together into a single ground wire. Our 3 power ends can also be run from a single wire. We also have our air ride wiring stuff, which is still tied up here, and we still have to integrate all the actual main bike wiring. So this is all kind of like our pre-wiring, you know, getting all our extra added on accessories wired in, and then probably in the next episode, because I'm starting to get tired, we'll talk about integrating this into the main wiring of the bike. You know, how to read the factory wiring harness to determine what you can eliminate and what needs to stay. You know, so the bike still functions. There's a lot of extra stuff you can get rid of on pretty much every bike. So we'll talk about all that stuff coming up here. Just going to go ahead and get these relays wired in while it's fresh in our mind what we're doing, and then probably call it a night. So again, on the relay, the small white wire is our signal wire. So that's going to be the wire from the switch that we know is low amperage, but and all it's doing is switching the relay, and the relay is low amperage. So go ahead and slide these in, and then we're going to find whatever our first one that we're going to do is. Let's see, what do we got here? Our radio wire. Okay, so we're going to take this radio wire and we're going to go ahead and hook it in to our first relay. So when we flip our switch, the switch will trip the relay and send juice through the relay to our radio, which has an amplifier and all that stuff. So it's got a little bit of an amp draw. I think it's probably a 20 amp fuse. So, you know, probably likely a 15 to 16 amp draw. These are going to go to our air ride switching valve, which we haven't installed yet, but will be in here. So we're going to just tuck those away for now. Our ground wire is going to come up out of the box to go to the battery. Have our last relay in here that we're going to hook for our air compressor relay. Again, the air pressure switch in the tank that we installed, I think in episode 2, maybe episode 1, needs a relay because it's just a light duty pressure switch. So let's see what we got here. We got shrink wrap all over the floor. Okay. So here we have wires that can run up here. Bring them here. Tie them in place. Our power and our one side of the switch is going to go in here to hook to our relay, which we need to get some of this. The other good thing I like about this insulation is like on this piece, it's a little bit too long. You can just hit it with your torch real quick and it melts off. You slide it off. You get a piece of heat shrink to slide over the end there, and you're back in business. So get this on here. Here, this other side of the switch is going to go to our switched power, and the black is going to go to ground. So we'll pull those through with our wires we had tucked up here from earlier. And this is also our battery power, so we'll tuck that and our ground, because our battery box is sitting right here. And we'll probably get those all loomed up. This is our radio output wire, so that'll end up having to get run back towards the front. So you don't have to go crazy, but you just kind of lay it all out so it's near where you want to go and it's easier to keep sorted. And then here we have our last two relay wires to hook up. So our purple is our signal, so it's going to go to the small white wire on the relay. Last couple solder joints of the night. Alright, that was our last wires there. So our whole relay bank is all wired up. We have our two wires for our air switching valve, which will slip in here. We'll go ahead and tuck those away for now. And then our box will close up, which is nice. Keeps any not moisture really, but it keeps water out of there. This will end up running back up here. And then luckily, when we put our side cover on, it's basically going to have everything covered except our one little piece of loom, which the seat and the tank and all that will help cover up anyway. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks for watching along. Again, don't forget to watch our video about our bike giveaway. And please share it everywhere. We need lots of new subscribers in order to get that bike given away. We want to give it away. We're excited to give it away. So please share it on all your social medias. Don't forget you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Gaddy's Garage. If you want to see what else we're doing a lot more than what we show in the videos. Unfortunately, we don't have time to film everything we're doing, but we try to share as much as we can because I think people are interested. So anyway, again, thanks for watching along, and we hope to see you again at Gaddy's Garage.